Hello YouTube. So already did a video today, but it was on stupid drama stuff, and I don't like doing that kind of video. In fact I fucking hate it. So I figured I wanted to do another video today to sort of compensate for that stupid video. Now I'm in creepy spotlight vision, because it's getting it's 8:20 here, so it's getting a little late, a little dark out, so. Creepy spotlight vision is the answer. Um, but I was talking to a friend of mine after I made that last video. We went out and got coffee and just sort of talked for a while. Um, and we were talking about politics, um, and he and I talk about politics a lot. We're both very steeped in a lot of the same philosophical traditions. We're both very much steeped in um, the same political sort of ideals. Um, and so we always, he tends to be a little bit more of a reformer, and I tend to be a little bit more of a radical. But other than that distinction, um, we're quite close. Um, but one thing that came up was like the progress of technology. And I think A Bit of the Universe is one of my subscribers. He asked me about uh, philosophies of the future, right? Speculating on what the future might be like. Um, and there's some stuff. There's not too much, but one thing that always strikes me as being an interesting contingency is that we're seeing a whole propagation of different kinds of technologies, sort of different kinds of open source technologies in particular. We're seeing, so for instance, we're seeing like a renaissance in robotics through sort of open source means. We're also seeing through Kickstarter and crowdsourcing all these sort of like tech startups cropping up that are coming out with these sort of kooky, novel products, um, which I think is really interesting. I think it's politically very interesting. Um, and what my friend and I were talking about was what would it, we 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 historically have produced all this technology in the hopes that we could um, increase labor time, right? Or leisure time, excuse me. That we could decrease the amount of work that we're required to do, I guess you could say. Compulsory labor, you could say. And historically we've seen struggles for the 8-hour workday and stuff like this. So what we're talking about is one of David Graeber's suggestions. Why isn't it the case that we are coming up with ways or coming up with thoughts about the 4-hour workday or even the 10-hour work week, right? Like 6 months of paid vacation time, some kind of model like that. Um, and it strikes me that kind of model, when you first hear it, right? When it first pops into your head, probably sounds kind of insane, or probably sounds like the desire of a lazy person or something like this. But the interest would be, not so much to reduce the work that we do, but to reduce the amount of compulsory work that we do. I have to do X amount of work to eat, right, or to live. Um, and it just looks more and more to me that if we don't already have the technological means to be able to reduce the amount of work that we have to do, then certainly it strikes me as being the case that uh, those technologies are things that appear to be sort of on the horizon. One thing that's been noted by a number of economists is that with the advance of technology in the past 30 years with information technology, the amount of working hours has actually dramatically increased. And a dramatic increase in working hours also leads to a situation where there's lots of work that has to be done that is just to deal with the fact that so much work has to be done. So if you have a lot more night jobs appearing, as a for instance, then you have to have more like 24-hour restaurants and stuff, which increases working hours. You have to have more like nighttime security guards. You have to have a larger industry around dealing with anxiety and stress, right? To deal with the fact that so many people are just working so many more hours, which in turn then like increases the amount of working hours that we have. But at the same time, I look around and I don't see like or any sort of organization around pragmatically saying like, okay, like, you know, maybe we can't have maybe we'll never get to the goal of a 10-hour work week or something, right? Maybe that's far-flung or far-fetched. But what we can do is take that as sort of an impossible goal and work towards reducing working hours, right? Work towards reducing the amount of hours that you have to work a week in order to survive. This doesn't seem to me like a totally insane goal. I could imagine people in robotics communities, for instance, developing, you know, robots that could take over menial tasks and stuff like that, which there is some work towards doing, but not with this conception in mind, right? Of how to reduce working hours. You could imagine ways of automating like paperwork and stuff like that, which is where in America at least a lot of our labor comes from, is just doing paperwork, you know, just bureaucratic nonsense. But you could imagine sort of ways to automate that. You could imagine systems and computer programs that could potentially like dramatically cut that stuff down. You could imagine sort of economists sketching out ways to reduce working hours while at the same time maintaining standard of living. You know what I mean? Further, if you have people working like let's say, to take an extreme example of like a 10-hour work week, you could have more people doing less weekly work. You know, it strikes me as being the case that like that kind of goal, given the technological advancements that we have and given the technological advancements that we expect to see on the horizon, that's a goal that, even if it's not to get to a 10-hour work week, just to reduce working hours, should be something that is very much on our minds. It should be the case that we more and more think of ways to make work voluntary, right? The work that we participate in is work that we want to participate in. The work that we don't want to participate in, we can minimize as much as possible. It strikes me as being the case that there's no good reason why we should be working 40-hour work weeks at this point. It's just that, like, I would say the distribution of labor is such that it makes that a necessity, but it's more of an inefficient distribution of labor than it is an actual economic necessity. Now, I could be totally wrong about that, and I would love to see somebody provide me with an argument why it's not possible or why it shouldn't be at all on the agenda to reduce working hours. Yeah, I just don't. I don't know why people don't talk about it. Right? It doesn't even have to be something that takes place in the same way as you know, the 8-hour workday with these general strikes and all this stuff. But you could just imagine like the proliferation of technologies and devices that would make the work week that we have less necessary, right? You could imagine the pressures that force people into 40-hour and plus work weeks. You could imagine those pressures being alleviated through various means. I don't know. So it's just something that I'm thinking about. In some way, I want to pose that as a question. I want to pose, I want to pose two questions. First of all, what are the reasons why we're not talking about that in any substantial way as a society, right? Not just here on YouTube or something. What are the reasons why that's not the case, first of all? And second of all, what do you do to little projects in little sectors, right? Little ideas, little open source robotics technologies, computer programs, and blah blah blah. What can you imagine that would support the idea of reducing working hours? It seems to me to be a noble cause. So yeah, have a good day.